Hello everyone and welcome to Werven's World and welcome to my review of Robothorium. Robothorium is a game that will be released on Steam in early access on the 7th of June, but the developers were kind enough to give me a key so that I could review it. Although keep in mind, of course, this is a early access review, so if you watch this video later, stuff might change, so yeah, keep that in mind. And let's get started. So what's the premise of this game? Well, story-wise, the easiest way to show you is to just show you the introduction of the game itself. So if we click on play, we can choose a save slot and we can choose 3 different difficulty levels. So Rebellion is recommended for beginners, and then Revolution basically makes it so that the game ends whenever your party gets wiped. So let's click on Rebellion here, validate this, and let's watch the cutscene. So the game is told through these kind of cutscenes as well as to these text-based little text boxes things, and you start off by basically making yourself a little bit of a robot team, and there's a couple of classes to choose from. So here is like a very defensive thing, here's a support robot, this one here targets people and attacks them with his drones, this guy is just all about damage, and so on. So for example, I could say I want to have this riot one for the defense, this one for the attack, and maybe I want to have some repairs. So then we have 3 robots and we can start the game. And 3 robots is not the maximum you can get. As you can see here in my actual save game, I have 5 robots. I'm not sure if that's the maximum, but that's how far I got currently. I'm about 5 hours into the game now. And I've got a couple of different classes. So here I also unlocked this lady here, and she's kind of been a performer, and she can do kind of like things like charming and performing, put on different masks, which is quite interesting. But so what is the goal of this game? So as you can see here on the map, we have these squares here, and we can just walk from one square to another one, and sometimes a square will give us a special thing like a battle or a trap or things we can open, or maybe we can contaminate the air ducts in order to have our enemies start off with a debuff and so on. So there's nothing happening here yet. It's very empty. Here we go. This was a trap. I now got overload plus 25, and overload is something, this is the yellow bar here. The more you get it, once you get to 100%, then you have to miss a turn because you kind of get stunned. You overloaded your robot. So by walking on this trap, this guy here got stunned, and now in the next battle he has to miss his first turn. However, many more things can happen, so let us continue. Here is, for example, a survival crate. I could open this with a 75% chance and get something, but if I miss it, then here my danger level goes up and the enemies will become stronger. So I will now miss it for now. Then we go to the bellow box, and this is because I'm doing the campaign. Now I currently have to steal the voting results, and that's because of the story. So I can just click on it, and that's 1 out of 4 done for my actual mission. So that also unlocks a certain gate, because here might have been a gate where I could not pass before I get that bellow box, and that's how they kind of guide you into different parts of the maps. So now we can just go to the right here. And now we can make a choice. So we get a police officer who wants us to stop here because, well, he doesn't trust we're not allowed to be here. And we kind of have 2 chances or 2 things to do. We can either cooperate with him, or stun him. And this can have repercussions later on in the story because there's several different factions that you can either help or be annoying to, and they will give you reputation, and that gives you different buffs as well as different story elements. So here we can, for example, stun this police officer, and then currently that doesn't do anything. It just made me get rid of the police officer, and if I had cooperated I needed to spend some money, but later on this might have effects on the game. So let's continue. Here we have another bellow box. This is a very quiet run through currently. Normally I would already have been in a fight for a couple of times. Here we got a cutscene. And due to that cutscene, we now are at the danger level of 100, which means that the monsters are much harder to fight. So this is again a trap, which gives us 30 damage. Here is a fire hydrant that could contaminate the vents, and then if that works, then the enemies would start off with corrosion debuff, which means they get some damage every turn. However, I was already at a danger level of 100, which is the maximum, so I didn't care if I fail, because I can't go up anymore anyway. So I want to find a battle, which seems to be hard this time. And here we have a battle. You can see that we are currently fighting these level 11 guys here. And this one started off with putting a buff on everyone, and this one put a buff on everyone. This one is attacking me, that one is attacking me. And now we can see that all these enemies here, they've got some buffs. So if we click on him, we can see that he has enhanced resistance, 200%, he's got increased critical hits and powerful critical hits. So not only do they get critical hits more often, but also they do more damage whenever they do it. You can also see here some skills of the enemy as well as its statistics. Well, now we have to fight, and fighting is in a turn-based fashion. You can see here who is in turn, and this is based on your speed stat. So we can see here that we have a speed of 141, and that's why we are first. Normally this one here would have been earlier, but because he was overloaded, he wasted his turn. Now, every type of character has different skills, so this is a bit of a support guy. So you always have just a shot, you use your weapon, and then you have some extra skills. So first of all, this one here has localization, which debuffs an enemy. It increases the damage that they take by 35%, as well as reducing their heals. Then we also have a shield, which basically, this blue bar here, I can regenerate that. So let's say I click on this one here to regenerate my shield, because otherwise they might kill me. And now he's got full shield again. This lady here, she has some different skills as well. She can either charm someone, she can improve the power of people when they are healed. She can stalk everyone, which means that whenever someone attacks them, you regenerate some shield. So basically everyone gets kind of lifesteal. Then we can also put on a different mask, or we take the mask off. And then we can heal everyone's shield, we can do damage transfer. For example, if I click on these two, then they will equalize the damage between them. Or I can do Illusion of the Show, which reduces the damage taken by 30% as long as you have shield. So let's say I would just stalk everyone. And now they're all stalked. And now it's this guy's turn here. I can, for example, debuff some more. I can give them corrosion, which means they will get damage at the start of every turn. And then we have our big shield guy here. I can stomp on the ground and do a shockwave and hopefully stun some people. Didn't work this time, I just did some damage. And then we have this guy here who can just do damage. For example, hail of bullets. I can do loaded shot, which does a ton of damage and also debuffs the enemy a bit. So they already killed one of my characters, as you can see here. And the second one. And now it is time to, for example, heal the shields. Just doing this as an example battle so you can kind of see how it works. Now, this one here has this great thing here called splash ammo, which means that I can transfer all these debuffs to another person, but there's also skill trees, and I invested in the skill to spread the debuff to 2 additional enemies. So if I click on this, then you can see that suddenly all of these people have all the debuffs that that guy had. which is really great. Now, then I can, for example, shoot at someone with a lot of debuffs, do a lot of damage. It also bounces. This lady here can also do a little bit more damage, but probably the best one is to heal this guy's shield a little bit. So otherwise he might die, which is not good. Now he's healed. And then maybe we just attack this guy here. Or we can try to stun these again. Now, what makes this battle kind of interesting is that every skill has a so-called overload value. So here you can see on the top of this skill, you can see 25%. So if I use this skill, my yellow bar will increase by 25%. This one will increase it by 25% as well, and this one will increase it by 30%. Now your basic attack always reduces your overload. So you can do a lot of special things, and then you have to do some basic attacks, otherwise you're gonna have to miss a turn. And that can be a trade-off, like sometimes you want to do a very powerful thing and miss a turn because that's better for you currently. So I can now just shoot at this guy. And this lady doesn't have a normal attack, but I skilled her up in such a way that doing this Passion of the Group, which heals shields, also reduces her overload. Now we just have to see if we can kill this guy. And now you can see something special here. There's another thing here called a kind of, well, I'll just call it our ultimate. It's called Thorium something. And this loads up slowly, and then you can use it as basically an ultimate. So you can already see that this guy has it ready. And if I would use it, oh, it's not his turn now. There we go. Then we get experience, but not the people that died, and we get some equipment as well as some money. And now we have to continue this mission. The problem is we lost 2 mechs already, and there will be more enemies in this game, so this is going to be a very hard mission to win now. So as you can see, it is absolutely vital to keep your robots alive during a mission, otherwise, well, you don't have those robots anymore and it's going to be very hard to finish. If you play on the easy difficulty though, when the mission is finished, your robots will be healed, even the ones that died during the mission, and you can use them again. On the second difficulty, it takes some time to repair them, while on the third difficulty, you basically lose the entire, well, the robots are gone forever and you lose the entire game if all robots die during a mission. Now, as you can see here, I have these 5 robots, and I have a locked one here who is currently at a demonstration, and I've got another one here in reserve. Now you can equip all these robots with different equipment, and here to the right you can see what they do. And these are the stats. So here I have shield, I've got the structure, which is basically health. We've got defense, which reduces damage by a certain percentage. We've got regeneration, which regenerates the shield every turn a little bit. We've got attack or power, which increases both heals and damage. Then we've got critical hit chance, and here we have speed, which means you get you go earlier in the battle. Then we also here have a certain type of emotion. So this one here is prideful, get more defense and critical hit. This one's angry. This one here is a poet. This one here is a nerd. And this one is prideful. I'm not entirely sure whether you can change those throughout the game, maybe based on some decisions you make or equipment, I'm not entirely sure. But basically, throughout the game you will find equipment and you can see whether it's better than what you already have by pressing shift. So for example, this would give me more speed because my current cannon gives me -16 speed, but it would also give me a little bit less attack. However, it would increase my critical hit chance, so you get kind of these trade-offs that you can do. The red ones I cannot use because every item has an icon. As you can see, this one, for example, has a purple and a yellow icon, which means only this berserker here as well as this guy here can use those. So there's different equipment that different classes can use. Now there's many things that you will be picking up, and you can basically build your characters from that. Also, you can craft items. If we go here to the workshop, then you can see here that I can craft different items for different classes, and also they belong to a set. So as you can see here, the Fortress Cruisers If I have 2 of the fortress set, then I negate bonus damage from critical hits taken. Normally critical hits give 50% extra damage, but if I have these 2 fortress thing that I'm wearing, which I am doing now actually, as you can see here, then I will not get extra damage from critical hits, which is quite nice, especially as this guy basically draws attacks to himself. He is more likely to get attacked, so it's good that we don't get bonus damage from critical hits, especially as you saw in that battle that I showed, that the enemies increase their critical chance and critical power quite quickly with these buffs all over their army, so having that is quite important. Next to this equipment screen, we also have the hangar where we can buy additional robots that we would want to use. Here you can also see their level and how much they would cost, as well as their personality. And you can also go to the black market where we can either sell our equipment for money, or we can actually buy some actual accessories or potentially crafting components from the black market. There's also an arena. I haven't looked at that at all. It's basically for online play, which I'm not sure how that works. So if we go back to equipment, we can also go to the talent tree. Now, this guy here, for example, he has 4 things, just like most of them, or all of them basically. We've got a standard shot, which reduces our overload. We've got this plasmic wave, which bounces to another enemy if the enemy is slower than a launcher. And I spec this up to also potentially do corrosion whenever I hit them. We have hail of bullets, which hits everyone, but it does additional damage for each enemy that's slower than him. So you can see that speed is really important for this guy, because the faster he is, the more damage he will do. Then we also have loaded shot, which does a lot of damage and applies weak spot so that other enemies can do more damage. Now, when our ultimate has charged up, we do 410 damage to an enemy, and it bounces to all other enemies, and it automatically lands a critical hit on enemies slower than a launcher. So speed is absolutely useful for this guy. Now, how does synergy come into play? Well, we can look at here, for example, and this is the skill tree. At first this outer ring will be opened, and then once you've put some skills in there, this one will be opened. Then once you've put some skills, this one will be opened, and I assume that this one will open at some point as well. Now, you can put some skill points into there, and for example, this one here is very synergetic. When an ally of the same line lands a critical hit, you grant a 70% chance that the Zerker unit, which is this guy, uses his basic attack on a random enemy. So when people in a line, which are these 3, they're standing in a line, when one of these crits, then this guy will also attack. Now, how does that work in synergy? Well, this guy here, who I now cannot show unfortunately, he's got a skill that makes all people in a line crit more often. So if I buff my line that they crit more often, then they will crit more often, and then this guy will attack more often passively because other people are critting, and so on. So you have this cool interplay between robots, and you can really set their talents in order to fit your way of building them. Also, these robots all have additional talents. If I right click on this, then I can see here that I could either put supersonic ammo there, which does damage and ignores resistance. I can put infernal capsules here, which does a lot of damage to people in a line and then does extra damage per speed that you have. And then we have inhibitor, which does damage to an enemy line and applies a debuff, which reduces their resistance by 50%. So you can choose which skills you want to have. For example, here I can say this one needs this one needs that one, and that one needs this one. For example, you can build it however you want, as long as you always have your standard attack. So far so good. So what do we have here? We've got a story-based campaign where we can do missions, and we have to do fights, and we can completely customize our army in order to try and win those fights. And in between we get some more equipment that we can either craft, or we can just use it, the one we find, or we can, for example, in the workshop we can recycle it and we might get some parts out of it. We can reforge it in order to change the stats, or we can build components in order to then build other things again. So there is a lot of depth to these systems. However, the game has a couple of pitfalls that prevent me from actually recommending it. But before I go into those, I should still talk about factions, which I forgot. Basically, throughout the game, you get in contact with different factions. The Humanobots, the Super Machine, who is very aggressive and he wants to kill all humans. You have the Cyber Rights, who is cyborgs, and they're kind of like in between there. Are they robots? Are they human? You've got Robothorium here, who wants to save the cyborgs in a way that the cyborgs don't agree with. And then you've got the Chip, who is a very rich black market guy. Now you can make choices throughout the campaign. Do you want to save the scientists or do you want to kill them, and so on. And for all those choices you will get reputation points. Now if you get enough reputation, you will get bonuses. For example, if I have Super Machine here, once I get here in the reputation, I will increase my money gained per enemy dead by 20%. I will also increase the success chance of all demonstrations by 20%. And in every mission, a group of enemies is pursued by Super Machine. Defeating it will grant random equipment, and so on. So each of these factions has some different bonuses that you can pursue. Now, that also makes me have to talk about these demonstrations. I actually haven't done these yet, and I'll tell you in a little bit why. Basically, there's demonstrations here and they show you who can go and what will happen there. Now, I thought that this was a mission for me to do. I could go to the demonstration and maybe something went wrong and I had to do stuff. So what I did is I took one of my guys, or I thought I could just send an army. If I click here on act, then you have to send robots. So I thought, okay, maybe I can send like all those 3. But as soon as I clicked on one of them, then basically he was added there and now he's locked there for 2 days because he's going to the demonstration, and now I cannot use him in my team anymore. So that was bad already because, well, this was one of my mainstay guys. He was the guys I leveled up and gave good equipment, and now he's gone and I can't get him back at all. Even though, well, I want to say through no fault of my own, because it wasn't clear how these mechanics worked. I thought I would just kind of do a mission there with these possible classes, or maybe some challenge or something like that. No, you just sent them away and then they're gone for 2 days. This meant that I had to buy a new robot, which I put into my team, which was this guy here. However, he was vastly under leveled. So now I've got a level 11, a level 11, 10, 10, and 8 here. And I've actually been leveling these already a little bit. This was a big problem, as I was 3 hours ago, I was in this mission, and I am still in this mission, and I have wiped on it for like 10 times maybe. And the biggest problem is that I have been trying this mission with my now suboptimal team because I sent this guy away, and every time I lose, I actually get to keep my experience and equipment that I find, which is great. So I thought, okay, maybe I can just, well, this was too bad, maybe I can just grind through it, do that mission a couple of times, get more experience, be able to wear more better equipment, because they all have a level cap. As you can see, this one here can only be worn when it's level 11 and so on. However, the missions level with me. So at first when I was level 9, all my enemies were level 9. Now that I am like between level 11 and level 8, all the enemies are level 11. So I've been trying different skills, I've been trying different talents, because you can also reset your talent count. I've been trying different robots, like different setups, and nothing seems to work. So I just seem to completely be stuck here. The problem also is every time you lose, the time actually does not go on. So this one has been stuck here for 2 days, and I've been doing this mission for 10 times, and the time remaining is still 2 days. So I can't get this guy back no matter how I try. There's also another mission here, but I had the same problem there. I just couldn't get through it. So that's pretty bad. I'm stuck in the game and I cannot seem to get out of it anymore unless I restart, which I really don't feel like doing. The reason I don't feel like doing that is that the gameplay is not that interesting yet. Basically, it has a couple of sins, I would say, for, well, they are a self-advertised roguelike, which I don't agree with, which I'll talk about a bit later. But basically, you go through these maps and you think you might do something smart. You find an observation robot and you're like, ooh, let's reassure it, and it gives us some camera feed, and now we know where the enemies are. However, the level design is such that, well, I know that there's enemies there, but there's no way I can avoid them. They're always in places where you just have to go through them, because you're kind of being funneled through the campaign system from place to place, and you will always find these enemies on the side. So even if I know that there's enemies on one place, basically doesn't do much. Maybe they might be surprised and I get a little buff or something, but there's no room for smart play there. Also, there's these trap rooms, as you saw already when I was doing my playthrough, that, well, okay, I walked into a room and now suddenly I'm 20% overloaded. Yay! Hey, I walked into a room and suddenly everyone got 20 damage. Yay! There's nothing you can do there. You can't try to disarm the traps, you can't try to circumvent them, you just walk into a room, see what happens to you and deal with the consequences. The only interesting decisions to make are basically, are you going to try to contaminate them or not? Because then they will have corrosion at the beginning of the turn, but there's only a 60% chance that you do it. And if you don't make it, then the danger level goes up and the monsters become stronger. So there's a little bit of choice to be made there, but the level design is just made so that there's no room for smart play in a way. The only things you can do is to build your team with equipment and skills in order to synergize with each other. And that's actually done quite in an interesting way. So it's really a shame that this dungeon crawling doesn't work at all. Furthermore, what is a problem is that you are dealing against 6 enemies, and sometimes they all go in a row. And they, first of all, they have access to these huge buffs, like buff everyone with more critical hit chance and more critical hit power, like in the first turn of the game. And then suddenly you have 6 people that are much stronger. Second of all, if those 6 go in a row, for example, I act with 2 robots and then it's those 6 and then it's my other robots, and they focus fire, then basically you might lose 1 or 2 robots in a turn without you being able to do anything about it. So this makes it quite frustrating because you have to keep replaying missions, but because they level with you, the more you grind, the more difficult they still become. So there's basically no way out anymore, at least the way I can see it at the moment. There doesn't seem to be a way out because I feel like I've tried everything. I've tried different combinations of skills, different equipment, different robots, and so on. That brings me to the part about it being advertised as a roguelike, which I completely disagree with. This plays nothing like a roguelike, and of course they have the hardest difficulty where if your team wipes, well, then you're dead, like you have to restart the game. That's the same as addressing or saying that Diablo 3 is a roguelike if you play it on hard mode. And in my opinion, of course it's my opinion, that's just not the case at all. And I think this game would be way better to change the design, not to try to fit into some roguelike things to maybe get more sales, but actually to more have it as a story-driven game like Final Fantasy or something, like actually do turn-based encounters that are interesting, go through the story, which actually seems to be quite fun, although, yeah, I'm stuck in this level, so I can't really seem to get further, and I'm playing on the easiest difficulty as well. So maybe I'm just really bad at this game, but I just feel like I've been trying everything. So I think currently the game is not worth getting. It's just really frustrating, and there's a couple of design choices that I think are just hugely uninteresting. For example, the traps that you just walk into a room and you get overload, yay, and there was nothing you can do about it. So overall, the game has a lot of potential. The story seems interesting. It's very polished. The graphics are nice. The music is nice. The combat system is quite interesting, although I think it relies too much on buffs, debuffs, and the fact that there's 6 enemies makes it sometimes very random that they might all focus fire and suddenly your guys are dead. But overall, there is the making of a good game in here, and I really hope the devs keep at it in order to actually turn it into one. So this was my review of Robothorium. I hope you found it useful, and see you next time.